Normally I wouldn't make a video in which I play a role, but this one is personal. First, we traveled back in time to July of 1962. Of course, most things were in black and white then. We're traveling up north, as Midwesterners say, to Whitestone Point on Lake Huron. My folks rented a cottage there by the name of Geyer's Box, and they extended an invitation to my bazillion cousins, aunts, and uncles to come up, which they did. I was 5 years old, and Geyer's Box was a paradise for me. Out on the lake, crawling along the horizon like snails, were the big lake freighters, sailing in and out of the Saginaw River. The grown-ups told us that they were, quote, ore boats. And so, to us kids, it didn't matter if they were hauling stone, or grain, or scrap metal on that filthy river. They were all ore boats. My dad would borrow a boat from one of his buddies at work and go from being a railroad fireman to a Lake Huron fisherman. He'd slay a bounty of perch, clean 'em, fillet 'em, and the moms would cook 'em up. Throughout the day, we kids would play in the water and the sand and get dirty and expend energy until we collapsed that night. Then we'd get up at the crack of dawn and do it all again. In the background, there were always those ore boats. One day, Dad wanted to spend some time with just me, and we went for a walk down the beach and around Whitestone Point. Along the way, I spotted a rock in the sand that seemed way out of place. It was dark red, or more brownish orange, and it wasn't rounded by the waves and sand. I picked it up and gave it to my dad. He looked it over and tossed it into the lake, saying it was just a piece of iron ore, probably from some old shipwreck. Iron ore? Shipwreck? I looked out on the lake where a big ore boat was sailing by in the distance. Whoa! One of those big boats shipwrecked right here? My imagination ran wild. The rock had to be iron ore, and there had to be a shipwreck, because my dad said so. And to a 5-year-old boy, Dad was the oracle of all knowing. Yet, as I grew up and started researching Lake's maritime history, I quickly realized that Dad's quip about iron ore and a shipwreck was simply a fatherly banter to satisfy his little boy's curiosity. After all, I found out that the sailing routes of the actual ore carriers were about 35 miles away from Whitestone Point. And the cargoes that came in and out of the Saginaw River and across Saginaw Bay were normally lumber, coal, and grain. The odds are that if any shipwreck on Whitestone Point took place, they likely would have spread lumber onto the shore, not iron ore. Yep, I was getting pretty savvy about those old shipwrecks. Or was I? We were looking at a very rare photo of the steamer Pittsburgh, taken in 1868. This image was provided by Great Lakes maritime historian and collector Brendan Baylod, and is from his private collection. Thank you, Brendan. This boat was rarely photographed, yet it had a very long life on the lakes. She was a standard package and passenger freighter, launched on Thursday, May 15th, 1856. Originally, she sailed the long-haul routes from Buffalo to Chicago. By 1860, she was running the lower lakes routes, including regular passages through the Welland Canal. In 1869, however, her new owner, John Gordon, began using her to make runs into Saginaw, where the lumber business was beginning to boom. Just 3 years later, She became home ported in Saginaw when shipbuilder William Coswaith bought her and gave her a major rebuild. The Upper Lakes would again be her route, but this time she began hauling grain. Then by 1879, Coswaith's empire was beginning to dwindle a bit. He removed her steam engine and abandoned the Pittsburgh at Buffalo, where she soon sank at her dock. The following year, Captain Charles Hamilton, with the backing of Mr. Samuel Beatty, gained possession of the abandoned hulk and went to work converting her into a tow barge. They rechristened her Cyclone. By the time they finished the boat, the Cyclone was a real beauty. She had plenty of space for cargo, both below and on her deck. She was also given brand new steel arches. While she was still in the yard, an offer was made by H. Smith to buy her for $20,000, $14,000 of which was in cash. Both Captain Hamilton and Mr. Beatty declined the offer. The Cyclone would carry whatever cargoes Mr. Beatty could arrange, and Captain Hamilton would hire a tow that happened to be going in that direction. It was a profitable little arrangement that worked out well. The towing steamer would make some extra cash, and the Cyclone's two owners would make some money as well. At 6 a.m. on the morning of Friday, August 28, 1885, the steamer John Pridgeon, Jr. passed Detroit upbound, with the Cyclone in tow. The two wooden lake boats were on a split cargo run. The Pridgeon was bound for Duluth, where she would pick up a cargo of corn, and on the way, she would drop the Cyclone off at Marquette, where the barge would load iron ore. Just 1 hour short of exactly 2 weeks later, the Pridgeon would pass downbound at Detroit, alone. The Cyclone would never be seen passing through the Detroit River or any other river again. Over a 48-hour period of September 8th and 9th, 1885, a massive northeast gale blew across Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. Reports stated that heavy rain fell for the entire period, and the winds were so strong that they actually smashed and wrecked schooners that were supposedly safely tied up in the ports of Alpena, Oscoda, and Tawas. Late on the 9th, a telegraph report from Alabaster, Michigan, stated that a schooner was blown ashore and was breaking up near that town on a location called, quote, Whitestone Point. The following day, it was reported that the schooner was thought to be the Cyclone. Later, it was confirmed that Captain Hamilton had indeed abandoned the Cyclone on Whitestone Point, and he and his crew had stripped the boat of everything of value. There is no such place as Whitestone Point on the Lake Huron shore. The mistaken name was a typo that was in the initial telegraph message, which should have read Whitestone Point. Apparently, the barge had broken loose from the Pridgeon northeast of Saginaw Bay, and the strong northeast winds had blown her onto Whitestone Point, where she broke apart and spilled her load of iron ore, a piece of which a curious 5-year-old boy would pick up and hand to his dad 77 years later. In modern times, we can actually see her on Google Earth. Of course, you have to spool the view clock back to 2013, when the lake water was very low. But there she is. Now, my dad had no actual knowledge of the wreck of the Cyclone. The wreck was briefly mentioned in small newspaper clips from September 10th, 11th, and 12th of 1885, and thereafter she was totally forgotten. So Dad had no way of knowing, and neither did anyone else. Until now.